Before we start this video, a large thank you to A New Body, Momo Isbilly, Will, Sirawat, and Elvis MD for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And an immense thank you to Halo Burner for their continued support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, my friend, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, today we're going to set up some basic UI. So I'm going to call this a character menu manager, and this is under the player UI prefab. If you can think of a better name, go for it. I'm going to call it this because it's pretty general. It houses the ability to open up your equipment screen as well as look at your character stats and all that stuff, and view your general inventory. So it's kind of a bit of everything. I'm going to create a new game object under that and call it menu, and I'm expanding these, by the way, to the full size of the UI. And then I'm going to create a third game object and call this window. Now I'm just going to size the window to however large I want it and anchor it to the left side of the screen, say about 640 by 1080. Obviously, I'm not going to spend any time right now on design. We can come back and revisit that later, and I'll show you some design philosophies I have. But just to keep things moving, I'm going to make this really ugly, to say the least. I'm going to add an image under this, and I'm going to expand it to make it the size of the window. I'm going to copy the image components of one of our UI elements here so the color matches. Now, looking back at this clip, I forgot to tick, or rather untick, raycast target on the image boxes. Please untick that because you don't need to click these backgrounds, and that's just wasting some CPU. It doesn't need to be wasted. So I am going to now open up the menu here, go to the background, and what we're going to do is just on the menu object itself, add a new script called player UI toggle HUD. So what's this going to do? Well, there's a reason why we have the menu object is separate from the parent object, which controls the script, or is going to control the script of the whole menu manager. This is because we're going to disable and enable this menu game object, and we're going to utilize this little utility script we're about to make. So we're going to delete the namespace, or rather delete the start and update functionality and add in the namespace as is per tradition. And I'm going to go over now on enable, and I'm going to add on disable. So what we want to do here now is basically just toggle the HUD. So when we are enabling this, that means we want to hide the HUD because the menu's been activated. And when we disable this, it means the menu has closed. We want to bring back the HUD. So it's quite simple. In the future, we'll make it so it fades in and fades out. But again, that is a bit of polish and design. So if you want to go ahead and do that yourself, go for it. But for now, I'm just going to toggle it very basically. So you could put toggle HUD over here in the player UI manager like so, make it require status for toggling. Or you could just take this function and also put it on the HUD manager, which is what I'm going to do to stay a bit consistent with our design here. So right above refresh HUD, I'm going to have toggle HUD. It's going to require a bool status, as in the toggle status. So what I have to do here, and I encourage you to pause the video and try this on your own, fade it in and out over time. So if you want to go ahead and do that, figure it out, pause it right now, go for it. So we're going to require a serializable field for the canvas group variable. And we're going to call this canvas group. Now you might have multiple, so you may want to make this into an array, which I'm actually going to do shortly. But if you just have the one, that's cool too. So we're going to say if status else, and all you have to do is say canvas group dot alpha is equal to 1. So if it is active, set the alpha to 1, so it's fully on the screen. And then if it's inactive, set the alpha to 0. So we're not actually hiding it, or the game object rather. We're just basically masking out the alpha so it disappears. Now I'm going to make this into an array and use a for each because we have 2 currently of these canvas groups we're going to place in our player UI. One's for the pop-ups and one is for just the general HUD. So like your weapon slots, your spell slots, your consumables, and one's for like if an item pop-up or a message pop-up comes up on the screen, you don't want that to override your actual menu windows. Or maybe you do, and if you do, don't add a canvas group there. So again, same thing, alpha 1 and 0, and now we can minimize this and save it. Now go over to the player UI toggle HUD, and what we want to do is reference the player UI manager.instance and then reference the player HUD manager and then say toggle HUD, and on enable you want it to be false, and then on disable you want it to be true. As in when you enable this menu, hide the HUD. When you close this menu, unhide the HUD. Now go back to the prefab here in the scene, and you can see we have a canvas group variable, or an array rather. I'm going to add the first canvas group to this HUD manager. And I'm just going to drag it to the top just because I like it being up there. And I am going to place the first one in here. See, if I change the alpha here now from 0 to 1, you can see it actually fades and brings back the background, or the actual HUD there. So do the same thing with the pop-up manager. And then make sure you add that canvas group also into this array of canvas groups. All right, cool. So that should be working now whenever we call upon it. So let's create another empty game object, child object of the background here. And I'm just going to kind of mess around here with the transform, and I'm going to make it about the size I want to contain all of my future buttons. I'm leaving some space at the top if you want to add like a cool title or something. So I'm going to add a Text Mesh Pro button. And again, I'm not going to spend any time on designing this really. I'm just going to change the colors and the width a bit. I will make it a little bit darker than the background, just so there's a bit of contrast. And I am going to change the highlighted color and selected color to red so we know when we're selecting it. And I will change the text color to white so we can see it. And I am going to also change the width of this button so it's much larger. So we can come back and mess around with these later, style-wise, or you can take some time to do it right now if you want to. You can have an idea for UI, but here is mine generally. I'm going to rename this to Equipment Window because this will be the button that activates opening our equipment window. Now we can duplicate this. You can make one for character info. This can showcase like all your stats, maybe your total AR and all that stuff. And we're also going to make a parent object for all of these. So let's go rather and add a vertical layout group to this parent object. I'm going to untick force expand and set the spacing myself. I'll say about 50 looks cool. And you can play around where you want it. Maybe you want it up in the center up here. Maybe you want it in the middle center. Maybe you want it in the lower center, whatever you want to do. Now I am going to duplicate another button just so I'll show you what it kind of could look in the future. We're going to have like a basic inventory window here. So the difference between inventory and equipment window is on equipment window, you're changing your equipment. But on the inventory, you're just viewing your total inventory where you could cycle through different kinds of items in your inventory by hitting RB and LB, like your weapons, your helmets, your shields, etc. Next, I'm going to add one for the character window 2, or rather rename it for the character window. And we're also going to actually have a button here for exiting as well. Now you could just hide these for now if you want to, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to reactivate them and I'll just fade them out and make them non-interactable. Alright, so I am going to go to these buttons here now, and I'm going to add another one for exit. We are going to use this one in this video as well. I'm going to rename it to exit and set text exit, and we're not going to add anything to these right at this very moment. So these other two here, what you can do is highlight them both, or all of them if you want to. You can check out the color here for disabled and lower the alpha to whatever you want. And then if you untick interactable, so I can just use these two for example, you can see that it does do that, but the text is still pretty bright. So what I'm going to do for now is just go to this text and also change the alpha on it too, because these buttons aren't going to be put into the game yet. So what I do on Nef is I actually have a script that actually changes the alpha of the text as well as the button to match it, but we'll get to that much in the future. So we have equipment window and exit. These are what we're going to use. Let's also add a script to the parent here, the character manager, the main parent object. Let's call this player UI character menu manager. So again, if you can think of a better name that's a little less general for this, go for it. And if you think of one, leave a suggestion in the comments, because I don't really know what to call this outside of this right now because it's so general and houses so many weird menus. So I'm going to delete the update and start functionality add in our namespace as is per tradition. And the first thing I'm going to do is make a header here, and I'm going to call this menu. And we're going to use this across all future UI menus. So serializable field, game object, menu. So this is that game object that sits below the main object that we're always going to toggle. And on every future menu, we're going to have a function for opening and closing this specific menu. So we're going to have on this one open character menu and close character menu. And all we're going to do on open character menu is we're going to reference the player UI manager, and we're going to say that we do have a menu window open, and then we're going to activate the game object by saying menu.setActive is equal to true. And of course on close character menu we're going to do the reverse. Now on some menus you're going to want to close them a frame later if you use say an exit button, because if you don't do that you're actually going to hit A most of the time to do that. And what'll happen is you're going to jump at the same time as you close the menu, which you don't want. So we're going to address how to remedy that as well. If your jump button isn't the same as your activation button, then you're fine, but in a lot of games it is, so I'm going to go over how I do it. Now, go over to the player UI manager, and let's make a public master function for close all menu windows. So right now we only have the one, which we need to make a variable for. So let's make it hide in inspector, because we still want to reference it from the script sometimes, since this is the master script for our UI. But we don't want to see it because we don't need to. So we're going to say player UI character menu manager, player UI character menu manager. And we're going to initialize that on awake by saying player UI character menu manager is equal to get component in children. And then of course we pass the variable type. Okay, so when we have that done, what we can do now is disable that menu using the function we just made on it. So close all menu windows. When is this going to be called? Well, it's going to be called when you hit B, just to quickly get out of the menus. It'll close whatever menu you have up. So every time we add a new menu to the game, we're going to add it that master close all menus function. Okay, cool. So we have our open and close, and then we have our master close. So set them all up. So first, before we do that though, on equipment window, we're going to make another utility script. Let's add it to that button, player UI select button on enable. So instead of actually making a variable for the specific button and selecting that when you open the menu, we can just use this utility script. Again, delete the start and update functionality, add in a namespace. What this is going to do is you want to add this to one button, the button that you want to select on every window. And when it opens up, it's just going to select this button for you, utilizing the on enable. So we're going to make a private button variable. Make sure you're saying using Unity Engine.ui. On awake, we're going to say button equals get component on awake. So you always add this to the same component as the button. And then on enable, we say button.select. Now, in older versions of Unity, don't know if this was ever fixed, but or if it was really a problem to begin with, but basically, when you did button.select, it didn't fire the onSelect events that were attached to the button, and that's where I used to play stuff like noises and stuff. So to remedy that, you could say button.onSelect and say null right after it, and basically you won't get that problem. Now, I haven't tested it in this version of Unity, so maybe it's not an issue anymore, or maybe it's meant to be that way by design for some reason, but if you do it like this, if you have any onSelect events on the button in the future, it will still play them. So we're not going to use onSelect events right now, but we will definitely do that in the future. So let's just save that. And now we have that script on that button. And now whenever we open up this menu, it will basically select that button. Now go to the exit button and add an onClick event and drag in our character menu window and make sure we say close character menu. Now, let's disable the menu game object and save this and drag in the menu object here. Now, if you went to the game right now, as I said, if you try to close the menu, your character would try to jump immediately afterwards. So we're going to do a couple things to fix that, as well as set up our input buttons here to close windows and open the character menu window. So let's go to the player input manager. Let's add a header for UI inputs. Let's add a serializable field, a bool for close menu input. Now you can give this its own button, initialize it to false, but I'm just going to piggyback off of our dodge button, which for me is B on my Xbox controller. So we're going to do that as well and use that. So I'm going to copy this here from actions, and I'm going to come right down to the bottom. And I'm just going to make a little green comment here so it's clear what this is, UI inputs. And then I'm going to paste this and change the dodge input to close menu input. Like I said, if you want to give it its own button, that's cool, but it's going to work identically. So I'm just going to piggyback off the dodge input. All right, so let's add two new functions. The first one we're going to add is going to be utilizing that close all windows I was talking about earlier. So we're going to say private void handle close UI input. So all we need to do is check if we're doing this. We do that by saying if close menu input, we're going to say close menu input is equal to false. And then of course, if we do have a menu open, so if player UI manager.instance.menu window is open, we want to close all menu windows by saying player UI manager instance.close all menu windows. Cool. All right, so next let's make one for the opening the character menu managers, just pressing start basically, and then opening up that selection of menus to allow you to go to your character equipment or your character stats or whatever. So let's make another input up here now, and I am going to make a button for this one because I don't believe we have one using the start button. So bool open character menu input is equal to false, save that, and now let's go and set up a button in our player controls. You can duplicate one of your regular buttons. For me, I'm going to duplicate right bumper, and I'm just going to change the actual button. I'd call it start, or you could call it, no, let's just call it like it is. We do have dodge names, so this is only going to be used for this. So let's call it open character menu, or you could call it start too, honestly, it doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. Right shoulder is going to change from right shoulder on gamepad to gamepad start. So gamepad right down at the bottom, I believe it is. Yes, there it is, start. So I am going to drag this up here now, close this, and save it. And now this is going to work just like any of our other buttons. You guys know how this goes by now. I'm sure we've done so many of these. We're going to say player controls dot player actions dot character or open character menu dot performed plus I equals greater than open character menu input is equal to true. Okay, cool. Now what do we do down here? We're going to say if this button is true, we set it to false, so the action only fires one time, just like every other time. Now we also want to make sure we close out all other windows, including pop-up windows, before we start this. So player UI manager dot instance dot player UI pop-up manager close all pop-up windows. And likewise, we want to close all menu windows if we just happen to have one open. So we'll just basically reset the menu. So close all menu windows. And then lastly, want to open up the master menu window, which is our character menu manager dot open character menu. Cool. All right, so this would work as it's set up. Oh, we have to call these two functions to an update. So it would not work until we did that. So let's say under handle all inputs, handle close UI input, and handle open character menu input. Save that. Now go over to the prefab and save that. And now if I were to jump right now or open this menu in game, if I were to click exit, I would actually jump up off the ground. And also you can see if I open the menu, I actually can't move to another button. Why is that? Well, you see this thing called event system in our main scene. This was made automatically for us, but it wasn't made automatically for us in our world scene. So if we save that as a prefab and then go to our world scene and then drag in this prefab, now you will be able to move around in your UI using your controls. I can't tell you how many times I got stuck on that. Also, this should be false, not true. That's my bad. If you put it true, you probably didn't. Fix that. I'm going to save that. I can't tell you how many times I didn't know why the UI didn't work in my scene, only to realize I didn't have the event manager there when I was new to Unity. So, as I said, if you were to close this right now, this is fine, but if using the A button to close the menu, you will jump as you close the menu. This is not what you want to do. There's a very simple solution to this, and what you want to do is make a private IE enumerator, so a coroutine, and we're going to call this wait then close, and you want to wait a single frame, and luckily coroutines have a call for that. You want to say yield return new wait for end of frame, or wait for, fixed update, I believe is the one you want to use here. So it waits for the next update, and then you want to process the logic as normal, which for us is just closing the menu. So you want to actually use both of these, close character menu, and you want to do it, you can call one close character menu, and you can call one wait then close character menu, and I'll explain why. So if we go over to the handle jump input first, let's just make a check here. After we check for, or after we reset our input, you can see we have a comment here from previous videos. Let's actually put the logic in for this comment. If we do have some kind of menu window open, return, we don't want to jump. All right, cool, save that. Now jump back over here, and I am just going to copy this logic again and restore our regular function, and then make another one for this coroutine. And again, I will explain why. So let's make what we can call a coroutine, wait, then close menu. We already have that as the coroutine's name, so I'm just gonna move around a couple of things here. We're gonna put it right over here, right below this actually. So right above the coroutine, we'll say public void close character menu. You can say after fixed update, whatever's clear to you, or after a time, whatever makes more sense to you. So I'm actually going to use after fixed update, and then I'm going to say start coroutine, wait, then close. So now I will go over why we're using both of these. You want to use close character menu when we close out all the menus at once on the player UI manager. You want to use close after a time here on the exit button, because when we hit the button, we don't want to jump. So we wait a second, then close the menu. Now you want to use close character menu on the master object, because if we go back over here, you can see we're closing all menus and then opening the character menu. So if we wait a frame to close the character menu, it will instantly close after we open it again. I hope that's clear. So let's go over here now and over to the player UI if you haven't already, add in that close. Now if we go back to the game here, you can see I can open the menu, we can select the buttons, I can exit, and we don't jump. So that is working as intended. Now if I were to press the back button too, it closes all my menus. Cool, that's working as intended. Now let's go to the player UI manager and add a new game object for the equipment manager. Let's make that the whole size of the canvas. Let's do the same thing we did for the other ones by adding a menu. Again, I'm going to make that the whole size of the canvas, and then adding a window. So this is going to have the same workflow as our character menu manager, where it has a menu and then a window object. And we're going to toggle the menu when we open and close the menu. Whoops, I copied the wrong object. I was just going to copy the background here and kind of delete some stuff because I want it to be the same size to have some UI consistency, but I forgot, copy the window object and paste that as a child, and then delete all the buttons. All right, cool. So what we're going to do in here is we're going to set up some of our buttons. So I'm going to go down here and make a button. We're going to delete the text because we don't need it. And we're just going to basically make this a square if you're going off of the way Elden Ring is set up. And this is going to be our weapon slots. So right hand weapon slot 1, 2, 3. Left hand weapon slot 1, 2, 3. And you're going to have an item icon that's going to be a child of this. So I'm not going to spend any time making it look pretty. So it's going to be quite ugly for now. That's okay. I'm going to call this right hand weapon slot 0. And then I'm going to create an image under it that will act as the item icon. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to make an organizer. So we can say right hand weapons and make this organizer whatever size you want in the UI. It's always a good practice first to expand it as the full size, then center it again, and then kind of like, just whatever size you want it. That way it'll match the width, but I'm just going to change the height a little bit. So I want this ideally to hold 3 weapon slots. I'll put this in here like so. And if I add an organizer to it, a horizontal one, I'm going to make it middle center. I'm going to separate the force expand, but I'm going to keep on the width. And if I were to duplicate this now, it would organize itself, which I'm not going to do just yet. I'm going to set up the colors here first, so I don't have to change them all in multiple objects. I'm going to create the image down here for the item icon. Again, you can untick raycast target here, don't need that on. And you can disable this when it's not being used, which we're going to do via script. But just to give you a preview how to look, I'll put a straight sword icon in here. And I am actually going to resize it. I'm going to tick preserve aspect here on the sword icon, so it always preserves its aspect and doesn't stretch out weirdly. I'm going to make this, say, 90 by 90. Looks good. All right, cool. So now that I have that done, I am going to go to my UI prefabs folder and save this as a prefab. So I'll create a new folder in here called equipment menu. And then I'm going to drag in the right hand weapon slot 0, and we can just rename that to weapon slot. But basically, when we make changes, you want to save it as a prefab. So it will apply to all of them because we're going to have 6 of these, and you don't want to have to edit 6 of these game objects the exact same way. That would become annoying. So I'm going to duplicate them now because it's safe to do so. So I will have 3. And then I will duplicate the right hand weapons. And then I'm going to basically make a left hand weapons version. And if you want to untick width and set the spacing yourself too, that's totally fine. Just kind of make it however you want it to look. So I am going to then resize the height on this too, actually, so it's not taking up so much space. And then I'll duplicate it afterwards. Left. Just going to off video real quick, change all these to left instead of right. There's the name. I'm also going to create a master organizer for all this stuff because it's going to have, you're going to have weapons, your talismans, your armor. So I'm going to make a vertical layout group on top of this one, and I will untick force expand. I'll set the middle center, see how that looks. Probably going to have to be middle top though. Layout group, and then I will drag these 2 in here like so. And again, however you want that to look. So I'm definitely going to put this to upper center, and I'll have a title about that later on. And there you go. All right, so right now these icons don't really do anything, but we're going to make them do something. We're going to make them show our weapons. Go into item icon and untick enabled on image by default. We don't need those to be enabled unless we have a weapon. And I'm going to change the highlighted and selected colors to red so it's very clear when we're actually using these, or we're highlighting them rather. And then I will save that to the prefab, which will then apply, as you can see, to all these prefabs. Cool. All right, so far so good. Let's go to the equipment manager master object here now. And let's actually create the script for this. So I'm going to call this player UI equipment manager. And this is going to handle, as you can guess, actually equipping our armor, talismans, weapons, all that good stuff. So delete the start and update functionality and drop in your namespace. And then I am going to basically copy all of these functions from the player UI character menu manager so we can repurpose them, because we're going to keep the same workflow for all of our UI windows, which is a main menu object, an open and close function, and then some logic that goes inside these. So obviously I'm going to rename these open and close to the appropriate names that they should have. And we're not going to need the close after time menu, because we're not going to actually be closing this with an exit button. We're just going to be closing it with B. So no risk of jumping at the same frame that you close it, basically. So we can delete that. Now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go over now into my player UI manager, and I'm going to call upon a variable, and then I'm going to close the menu here and close all menus. So I'll make the variable a hide-in inspector. I'll make it public, player UI equipment manager, player UI equipment manager, and again, you want to get this as a component in children. So we're going to say player UI equipment manager, get component in children, player UI equipment manager, and then we come down here and we say player UI equipment manager dot close equipment manager menu. And then we're going to save that. Okay, cool. Let's jump back over to the prefab now, and let's go over to our weapon slots, and let's add to the first weapon slot our script here for selecting the button on enable. So for me, that's right hand slot 01, meaning when you open this menu, the first button that's highlighted is right hand weapon slot 01. Now let's hide that menu object. Let's go to the equipment window button here, and let's add an on click event. And when we click that, what we want to do is go over to the equipment manager and open the menu right here like that. All right, cool. Let's drag in the menu variable under the equipment manager. So that's working. Let's open that script back up. Now I'm going to say using Unity engine.ui. So what I am going to do here now is add several variables for the weapon icons. I'm going to delete that comment too because it doesn't apply here. And I am going to actually make a private void for refresh weapon slot icons. So whenever you open the menu, it's going to basically set all the icons there to whatever you have currently in your right-hand slots and left-hand slots 1, 2, and 3. So I'll make a header for this called weapon slots. Now you can do this two ways. You could make 6 individual images like this, which is what I'm going to do because I just like it that way better, don't know why. Or you could include them all in a list and reference each item in the list with an index of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 0, 1, 2, 3 being right hand 1, 2, and 3. And then 3, 4, and 5 being left hand 1, 2, and 3. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of that. It is, I guess, a bit nicer in the way that there's less code on the screen. So you would just make a serializable field a list of images like so. But I don't like using the list reference for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just like calling it directly right hand slot 1, 2, 3. I'm okay with having a bit more crowdedness here on the screen, but do whatever you want to do. So option 1, option 2, both will get you to the same place. All right, so after we have all of those icons, let's go under the refresh weapon slot icons. We're going to reference a player manager script. And we're going to get this player manager by, and back here, this is supposed to be in children in case you forgot like me, which you probably didn't because I said it. We're going to go and say using unity.netcode. Ignore that player object variable up top. I was just testing to see if this will work this way because this is actually an easier way to get it. We're going to get the player by saying networkmanager.singleton.localclient.getComponentPlayerManager. There we go. Now we have the player manager. We can get the weapons from the player. So we could say weapon item, and I'm going to call this right hand weapon 01. Probably should have called it right weapon 01 because it's going to auto-complete the image variable instead of this variable, and I type it out now. So we can say that's equal to player.player inventory manager weapons right hand slots 0. Now remember, this should never be null because if there's no weapon there, it should be unarmed. So we can say if right hand slot 01, whoops, it did it just now. If right hand weapon 01 dot item icon does not equal null, what we want to do is change the right hand slot 01's image to that item icon and enable the image because remember on the prefab it's automatically disabled. So we're going to say right hand slot 01.enable equals true. Right hand slot 01 sprite is equal to right hand weapon 01 dot item icon. And now if the item icon is null, which means you have the unarmed weapon, we're going to simply disable the right hand slot 01 image by saying right hand slot 01.enabled is equal to false. And now do the exact same thing for right hand weapon 02, 3, and then do your left hand weapon 1, 2, and 3 as well. So again, what we're doing here is grabbing the player using our network manager by going to the local client, which is you, and then referencing your player object and then getting a component for player manager. And then we're using that player variable to fetch weapons off of it using our inventory. And then we're basically just taking those weapons and we're going to assign the proper icons here. And here I have it all done here off video, so I'm not wasting your time. Now under Open Equipment Manager, we're going to refresh weapon slot icons like so. Now let's go back over here. I'm going to delete this again. This was just me testing to make sure the network grab was working because this is actually an easier way to do it. I'm going to use that in Nef now too. Now let's go over and drag in these item icon variables here like so. So right hand weapon slot 1, 2, 3. If you want, you could rename these. I like doing that a lot of times. So from item icon to right hand weapon slot 01, 2, 3x, so it's not confusing. Now go over to your equipment window and add an on-click event for closing that menu. And you want to make sure that we close that menu before we open up a new one. So let's go over there and drag it up top. And then we could save this prefab here for the player UI. I'm going to add a component for toggling the menu first, or the HUD rather. So under Equipment Manager, the menu object, make sure you add your player toggle HUD. Now save that. Now if I go in a game and press start and go to my equipment window, you can see I can exit, I won't jump. Go to my equipment window and there is my weapons and it selects the first slot, which is the right hand slot 01. All right guys, there you go. That's a great and fantastic start to our UI. So in the next video, hopefully we will get around to actually opening up an inventory from these weapon slots when you click them. And what we'll do is we'll load every weapon you have in your inventory in this temporary inventory window. And whatever weapon you click on, it will replace the weapon in that slot with the weapon you clicked on. Okay, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, guys. And as always, an immense thank you to my patrons. It is because of each and every one of you I get to keep doing this. You have my gratitude and my sincerest thanks. I will see you guys in the next one.